Put it away. Not respect.
Okay. We began last night. Everyone could hear me? Okay, we began last night with Hilchos Talmud Torah. The Rambam discussed, you remember last night, who was exempt from learning Torah. And tonight tonight is actually a unique night because I'm joined by son number 2 and by son number 1. Okay, and we're going to see why I have my children with me tonight. Because tonight we're going to talk about the priority. Okay, so we're up to Halacha Daled. Halacha Daled says, "Hayahu rotzel lilmod Torah v'yesh lo ben lilmod Torah." Let's say you have a predicament where the assumption is, I only have the ability to either teach myself Torah or my son Torah. All right, so the question is, who comes first? Do I teach myself first? Right? I mean, again, the assumption is that either there's, enough money just for one person, or it could be time, or it could be money. So the Rambam actually says, "Who kodem livno?" So, right. So my son Joshi actually guessed wrong, but he's still very smart. He actually thought that the child should come first, but the Rambam actually says that the father comes first. He takes priority. Now, the commentators actually discuss, does that mean that the child doesn't have to learn at all? So that's a discussion. But basically, when it comes to priority, the father comes before the children. Okay, that's again, if there's only enough to go around for one person. However, the Rambam has a really big qualifier over here, and he says, "Vim haya beno navon umaskil lahavin mashayilmod yoter mimenu." What if the son is a budding star in the rabbinate world, and he has potential, and he's very, very smart, and he even eclipses his father? Okay, what then? So the Rambam says, Bino Kodem, the son comes first. Okay? And as we always say, the Rambam brings down, he gets his sources from the Gemara, and this is a Beferish Gemara in Kedushin, where it talks about a story about Rav Yaakov Baridi's son. He sends his child Rav Yaakov to yeshiva, and he doesn't do well over there. He comes home, and the father's kind of dejected, and he says, "Yeah, I should have been the one learning, and not you." So that's just okay. My son disagrees, but that's the beauty of Torah. Now says the Rambam, "V'afal pisha b'no kodem lo yivatalhu." So we just said it a minute ago. If the son is a budding star in the world of Torah, he comes first. But what about the father? So the Rambam says that doesn't mean that the father could take off. The father also has to learn. Why? And the Rambam ends off by saying, Halacha Daled, Shekeshem Shemitzvah Alav L'lamed Es Beno, Kachu Mitzvah L'lamed Atzmo. Just like is a commandment to teach his son, that doesn't mean that the father sits back and watches Netflix. He has a commandment on himself to teach himself. So just because your son is a superstar does not mean that you're allowed to take off. Okay, so the mitzvah applies to the father as well. Okay, now we get to another interesting halacha, number 5. La'olam yilmod adam Torah v'achar yisa isha. So what do you do first? Do you first go to yeshiva, okay, or do you first get married? Whoa. So that's a decision, or that's a discussion that is a little bit different today than it used to be. Okay. So the Rambam says that you have to study Torah first, and then you get married. Why? Because let's say you get married first at a young age, and then you start going to yeshiva. Ein daito penuya lilmod. You're never going to have time to go to yeshiva because your wife is going to give you all kinds of errands to do during the day, and you'll be busy right? You'll be busy with, household chores. So therefore, you won't really have time to learn. So therefore, all things being equal, and that's the big, words in italics over here, all things being equal, it's better to go to yeshiva first and then satisfy that and get a foundation and then get married, right? This is not to be confused with the discussion we had a few weeks ago regarding whether you first get a job or do you build a house and then do you get married, right? That's a different discussion. Okay. Anyways, so when it comes to that, again, all things being equal, so first you go to yeshiva and then you get married. Okay. However, the imhaya yitro misgaber alav. What if your yetzer hara gets to you? What does that mean? Rambam says, "Ad shenimtza she'ein libu ponui." If you're overcome that you can't really feel that you could learn properly because you need to get married first to satisfy your desire, right? The Rambam calls it yitro misgaber. But what if you can't concentrate because all you do is, now that my son's left, I could say it, all you do is think about girls, okay? And it's a problem and it's affecting you. So the Rambam says, well, then you should get married, Torah. Then you should learn Torah. That way I hate to use the expression, get it out of your system, but that's what the Rambam advises you to do. Now, but that's a big, like, getting out of your system to get married, right? So again, there's much to talk about over here. I don't really want to do that because it's really like never ending discussions over here because there's all different, debates back and forth. The Rambam, he makes it too simplistic, like, okay, so you can't control yourself, so what, just get married? So obviously there's, it's just too much to talk about. So let's just stick to the words because that's what we're here for. But ideally, again, you should learn and then get married. But if you can't control yourself, you get married and then you study Torah. Okay, and by the way, that is actually not made up. He brings it from a Gemara in Maseches Kiddushin, and there's also a Gemara in Menachos that basically says, the pasuk says, "Umincha tahora," and the Gemara says, "Zehalomed Torah b'tahara," someone who learns Torah in purity, right? No seisha v'achakach lomed Torah. The way to do it, to learn Torah, in first to get married and then learn Torah. Okay, number 6. Me'ematai aviv chayav lilmod Torah. Okay, what is the age that you have to start teaching Torah to your child? So this comes from a Gemara in Maseches Sukkah, Daf Mem Beis, Mishayat Chila Daber Melamdo. As soon as the child learns how to speak, right, the very first thing you teach him is, everyone knows this pasuk, Torah tziva lanu Moshe. Okay, that's the first pasuk. Did I lose you? No, I'm going. So that's the first pasuk you teach, is the pasuk of Torah tziva lanu Moshe and Shema Yisrael. These are the basic psukim that ideally we start teaching our children at a very young age. Okay, now how young? Well, the answer is it all depends on the child, because as we know, kids are different, right, Joseph? Kids are different, and they have different ages, right, where they begin to talk, where they begin to understand. But this is the foundation of chinuch, is Torah tziva lanu Moshe. V'achar kach melamdo ma'at psukim ad sheyeh ben shesh or ben sheva. Then you teach him some Torah shebichsav, right? Just teach him, what we call Parsha Hashavua, right? Until Ad Sheyeh Ben Shesh or Ben Sheva, until he's about 6 or 7. Hakol lefi borio, according to what he could handle. According to borio, literally means his brius, his health, but it, how much he could handle. Umolicho etzel melamed hatinokos. Once you teach him little by little until he's 6 or 7, then it's time for the Rebbe. Then it's time for Cheder. Okay. Now Tosfos does ask the question in Tukkah of, didn't we say Ben Chamish Lemikra? So the Rambam says 6, 7. So not that 6, 7. The real 6 or 7. But the Rambam, Tosfos deals with that question of what exactly the right age is. If you want to look at it, it's a Gemara in Sukkah Daf Mem Beis. Tosfos discusses that. Okay. Heading back to number 7, and that's what we'll end with. Hayaminag Hamedina Likach Malamed Hatinokos Sachar Nosen Lo Scharo. So the Rambam says, if the custom is to hire a teacher, okay, then that's exactly what you do. You hire a teacher and you pay him. Okay, sounds simple. V'chayev olamdo b'schar ad sheyikra Torah shebechsav kulo. And the father obviously has to pay for the teacher, right? Until when? Until he could read the whole Torah shebechsav. Okay, remember, so you're paying someone to teach your son only Torah shebechsav. Makom shenahagu lolamed Torah shebechsav b'schar mutar lolamod b'schar. So a place where the minhag was to teach Torah shebechsav, right, through a teacher, then that's what you do. You pay through a teacher, right? Sounds reasonable. Aval Torah sheba'al peh asur lo lamdu b'schar. Everything we're talking about hiring a teacher for money is only when it comes to teaching Torah shebechsav. But when it comes to Torah sheba'al peh, i.e. Mishnah, Gemara, Rishonim, Achronim, basically everything else, that's what we call Torah sheba'al peh, and you're not allowed to charge if you're a teacher, right? That throws everything we think about high school teachers away, right? That's a problem. The Rambam here is quoting the famous Gemara in Nedarim 38 that says, the pasuk in Devarim says, that look, I'm here teaching you what we call chukum umishpatim, like God taught me. So the Gemara makes the famous diuk, ma'ani b'chinam lamadati, just like Moshe says, God taught me, he didn't charge me any money. So too, afatem lamadatem b'chinam mimeni. So too, I will teach you, right, Bnei Yisrael for free, right? And that is really the source that you can't charge for Talmud Torah. Okay, so on and on, perpetually, that's the way it's going to be. When it comes to teaching Torah sheba'al peh, right, which we said is different than Torah shebechsav, so the Torah sheba'al peh element you can't charge. Okay, now, how do we deal with that today? So recall that we call getting around it schar bittul, right, or schar batala, all right, which is basically pay me, right, or else I'll be unemployed. So pay me something. So that's what we call schar batala. That is the way around it, so that teachers today actually get paid. Okay. Lo matzah misha yilamdu b'chinam, yilamdu b'schar. What if I go around and I say, I need a Gemara Rebbe for my son. He's falling behind. And I say, and I put out an ad and say, who wants to teach my child for free? Right? What do you think the demand is out there? Right? We're realistic. We know no one's going to volunteer their time. So if nobody is available in a perfect world to teach someone for free, then yalamdo b'schar. Then you have no choice but to pay even for Torah sheba'al peh. Shenemar emes kinei. Right? He quotes a pasuk from Mishlei that says emes kinei, which says basically truth has to be bought sometimes. Yachol yalamed lacherim b'schar. Okay, so that's if I have to hire a rebbe and no one wants to volunteer out of the goodness of their heart for free. So I end up having to pay the guy $100 an hour. Okay, reasonable. How about I say, oh, look at that, right? There's a guy getting paid $100 an hour for tutor. I think I'm going to do that. I'm going to go into the tutoring business. I'm going to teach Tuesday night shiur for $100 an hour. Am I allowed to do that? So that's what the Rambam says. No, right? I might think that I could get a good idea and say, let me go into the business also, because I'm paying my son's Rebbe, right? I might as well teach other people. Talmud Lomar va'al timkor. No, but the pasuk in Mishlei says no. You have to buy truth, but you can't sell it. So you're on the losing end of this proposition. You got to pay the Rebbe $100 to teach your son, but you can't make up that money and teach someone else's son, because it says ve'al timkor. Halamarata she'asar lo l'lamed b'schar afal pi she'limdo rabu b'schar. Right? You can't charge to teach, even though I got to pay, on the other hand, someone to teach my son. So we'll end over there. And again, so much to be spoken about, right? But we're only learning here, as they say, Bikiyas. Good night.
Good night, thank you.
You're welcome.
Or as they're more commonly known.
I was just going to ask if Tamei Mikra is considered Torah Sheba'al Peh or Torah